Welcome to SEC Live here on Tuesdays, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, noon Central Time on that SEC Podcast YouTube page, and of course 440 Sports as well. And when Aaron Dugan, as usual, Michael Bratton, Braden Gall here, when Aaron Dugan arrives, she arrives. And when she does, she brings the thunder, and we'll see when she shows up. So we'll see what happens. No, Aaron will be here working through some stuff there with her team over at the Cast Collective. So, all right, lots of stuff to get to today, Mike. First of all, good to see you. And we've got some thoughts on Missouri, since apparently you think I hate Missouri. Yeah. But I do not hate Missouri. I've been the one championing Missouri all off season. Before cousin Shane was on Missouri, I was on Missouri. I think they're going to be really dangerous on defense. So we'll talk about the recruit and what it means. Number 1, number 2, or number 3 player, depending on where you look on the rankings.
Yeah, but you also said kick him out of the SEC just a week ago. So I'm confused.
Okay. We're beginning the show as usual with putting words in my mouth. And I don't appreciate that about you, sir. I like many things about you. That is not what I said.
We can rewind the tape.
I said Paul Feinbaum said that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, same thing.
I'm putting words in Paul Feinbaum's mouth. It's totally different.
Gotcha.
Make sure you turn on the notifications, of course, at 440 Sports, at Braden Gall, at that SEC podcast, at Aaron Dugan, Aaron Dugan, of course, Aaron_Dugan on Instagram. We never know exactly when you're going to show up, dude.
I will say that I was really cutting it close there, but I was in before the intro ran, but Michael was obviously trying to run the intro. So
he's very busy. He's a very busy man. Okay. So we're going to get into Florida naming a quarterback, other quarterback battles, offensive coordinators that are brand new across this conference. I had a chance to go out to Vanderbilt practice, and I had a few observations. I wanted to see what you guys thought when I actually got to, heaven forbid a football coach open up his practice and let people watch what happens. I'm assuming Vanderbilt's going to lose at least 3 more games this year because we, the media, got to actually watch them practice. Because that's
sarcasm.
I assume that's what is nervous, what makes Kirby nervous and Nick nervous and all these guys. You can't watch practice. There's a competitive advantage to be gained, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, some offensive coordinators and some stuff like that going to be today's primary discussion. Coordinators we're buying into, offenses we're buying into, quarterback battles we're buying into, breakout names, and then names we're concerned about. We'll get into all of that today. As usual, if you want to comment, please jump into the comments. We do appreciate you guys, and we'll let you steer the ship if you've got some good questions and some good commentary. And as usual, we do appreciate it. See, there you go. Hey, there we go.
God.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael, for that.
Let me start real quickly with the Graham Mertz stuff. Mike, I know you guys talked about it a little bit on your pod, and I think this kind of dovetails into the conversation about Joe Milton, about Spencer Rattler, about maybe Jackson Dart. There's a few guys that have been around in the game for a while that are going to get their chance this year to have bigger seasons. And I think Milton and Rattler, for example, are far more talented than Graham Mertz. But Graham Mertz came out of high school as a big-time 4-star recruit. He's going to be the starter. I guess my question is, shouldn't we expect all these guys to have their best season now that they've been in college for 14 years? And isn't that fair to expect them to have their best season? The question is, what does that look like? What is their best season?
I would say no, because I think when we've seen you for 3+ seasons, you are who you are. You are who we've seen. And there's just not many guys that have been average at best for 3 years and then have this big breakout year. And I mean, the examples out there are maybe like Joe Burrow, but first 2 years he didn't really play, and I think that's a bad example because even his junior year he was solid. He was not spectacular, but he was solid. And some of these guys that we're referencing, I mean, when were they solid?
I mean, Rattler. If you're talking about Rattler or Milton or Mertz, I could argue that Rattler's had the most consistent season when he was a freshman back at Oklahoma. Milton's had some.
He got benched twice that year, I believe.
No, I said the most.
It's all relative
of the group. I mean, Graham Mertz and Joe Milton actually have identical. Like they had one elite game in like 2020, and that's kind of it. The difference is Milton had a couple of games last year, but again, same thing with Jackson Dart. Really good couple of games as a freshman. He did have an entire season starting last season, so I think that's the difference. Is at least Dart had a full season under center.
Yeah, and like with Graham Mertz, it's like you have seen ups and downs, even like a program like Wisconsin that is not always at the very, very top, but is like relatively consistent when it comes to college football. But he has had some ups and downs. I mean, it's hard you can't exactly say how a player is going to fit into a new system. And if like what was his inconsistency, based around some other things that were happening, where he was playing. But I don't think Florida is like quite on solid enough ground yet to say that, oh yeah, you can plug Mertz in and he's talented enough that this system will make sure that it helps him, get away from those inconsistencies. Like Florida itself isn't consistent enough to make him more consistent. So I do, you know what I mean?
I agree.
So it's just, we don't know yet.
I like, first of all, you threw it up there, Mike. Travis, Graham Mertz is the starting quarterback at Florida, best case scenario. Getting their asses beat by Kentucky. That's not us. That is Travis. Liquid Flame. And I think this is probably about right. Graham Mertz is going to be serviceable, and that's all he needs to be. I think that's probably about right. Again, I think it's fair to expect Graham Mertz to have his best season as a player. I just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
He started a lot of football games, and hasn't really been helped by his offense at Wisconsin. Offense was not particularly diverse. And
well, Utah is going to be a tough first showing too.
I don't know if this is fair or not, but I don't know if you guys saw Anthony Richardson today was named starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Does that help, hurt Billy Napier? No effect at all? Because, I mean, he didn't look like, a top 4 SEC quarterback for most of the year, yet he was the 4th overall pick. Now maybe that, I don't follow the Colts, so I have no idea. Maybe they've got virtually nothing behind him, but I don't know what that says about Billy Napier, that he essentially had a starting quarterback in the NFL last year and went 6-6 with Richardson.
From what I understand, they were asking him to do a whole lot of stuff. Like they were putting so much complexity on his plate that's part of the problem. The defense for Florida was atrocious, and I think that's my concern for them this year is, are they going to be any better? And is Graham Mertz good enough to overcome that? I think we've learned, I think SEC fans should know this by now after watching football for however many years you've been alive. Quality of production in the NFL does not equal talent and scouting in the NFL. Like they're two different games almost. And so, we've watched, I know you guys reviewed it. We've watched it. Like Johnny Manziel is one of the greatest college football players in the history of the SEC. Doesn't necessarily mean he knows how to read a defense or tape or a book for that matter. So I just don't, Will Levis.
Kevin Sumlin, I mean, his ass got fired not long after. I mean, that's an example of what I'm saying. I mean, is that a Billy Napier problem? You're saying they're asking him too much. Why did they ask him to do so much?
Well, I mean, I think too, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I don't know how much time Florida's offense spent on the field, but I have a feeling with what their defense looked like, that number it was more than they wanted to be. So you also run into like how much time purely have you spent on the field if your defense is going 3 and out, which they did.
Well, again, it's ironic. Mike and I were talking about this before the show. They were 4th in the SEC in yards per play on offense. They beat a top 10 Pac-12 championship team in Utah.
Right.
I think in year number 1 with an empty cupboard, we've talked about this last week on the show. I think last year was fine.
Right.
I don't think it was great.
Their defense wasn't helping them out.
Yeah, defense sucked. It was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it was really bad.
They don't, and then Mike, I don't know what you see this year, but I don't see dudes on the defense either, especially along the front line. I mean, Ventrell Miller's gone. Like, I just don't see dudes. And now you're running Graham Mertz out there again. I think it's okay to expect Graham Mertz to be the best Graham Mertz he's ever been.
Yeah.
But is that like the 12th best quarterback in the SEC? It might be. I don't know.
Now, all this shit
Congrats.
we're talking, I'm still picking them to whoop Utah's ass in the opener. Trust me.
They're like a 10-point underdog in that game. It'll be fun to watch. Rice Eccles Stadium out in Utah is pretty awesome. So, all right, quickly to Missouri. They land what amounts to 1, 2, 3 best player in the country. Defensive lineman, Williams, Nwaneri, depending on, again, I think that's how you say it. I apologize, Mr. Williams, if I butchered your name there. Eli Drinkowitz has recruited Luther Burden, was a number 3 player in the nation. When Missouri has been good, and this is my takeaway from this piece of news, when Missouri has been good in the past 15 or 20 years, they have done it on the backs of landing the big fish in their state. Whether that was Blaine Gabbert and Chase Kaufman back in 07 and 08, back in those days, Chase Daniel, like they went back and got Terry Beckner, who was from East St. Louis, which technically is Illinois, but basically in state. Sheldon Richardson in 09 was a 5-star, top 30 player in the nation. Dorial Green Beckham in 2012 signed with them when they won the SEC East. So I think if you're a Missouri fan, you're excited about this because I think you kind of have to have big names in state if you expect to be at your best. And so that's my first takeaway is great news to get the recruit, obviously.
For sure.
But historically, Missouri has been at its best when it can win those big battles in state, and that's a big sign for old Eli this offseason.
Well, credit to the state for making the NIL law so favorable, and I just can't believe the backlash. I mean, I guess we should anticipate it, Braden, with all these people that are against, Williams going to Missouri, staying home for the in-state school. Everybody, I guess they want every damn elite player to go to Georgia or Ohio State or Alabama. And I just think it's the height of stupidity because these are the same people that sit here and bitch every offseason that the playoff is the same 3 or 4 teams.
That is boring. Yep.
Year after year.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when we get a 5-star that goes Missouri, oh, well, he's doing it for the bag. He'll be transferred in a year. Eli Drinkwitz is a dork. He sucks. He's going to get fired. Why don't we celebrate these things? Because that makes Missouri more competitive.
Yeah.
And also people bitch about how the East is down and it's Georgia and nobody. Well, I mean, if he wasn't going to Missouri, he's going to Georgia. And I realize that it's probably not going to impact Georgia whatsoever because they'll have 50 other 5-stars on the defense. But he could be a landmark player for Missouri. He's not going to turn them into champions overnight or anything, but he could be a domino. There's another 5-star receiver thereafter, in-state, Ryan Wingo, who everybody in the SEC wants. I'm not saying they're going to get him, but I don't know. I just
it's good for the game.
I think it's despicable, all these people that are complaining about this.
So I have not seen all of that. I don't know about you, Aaron, but I've not seen all that. But it makes sense. It tracks.
I don't
people.
live in the Twitter sewers as much as y'all do.
True. That's true.
But I'm always happy to see a kid that can make a difference from in-state, stay in state. Braden lost all. Hold on, I'd love to read this. Hold on. Braden lost all credibility. Braden lost all credibility in live show number 1, suggesting Mizzou is at risk of being booted from the SEC. Let's give him.
Not what I fucking said. It's not what I fucking said.
Defend himself.
We are 12 minutes into the show, and people have been putting shit in my mouth now. Cut that. Clip that.
No can do, my friend. It's live.
No. What I said. I did not suggest that they were going to get booted from the SEC. What has been suggested is that the new college football entity, whatever it is, when they pick the top 40 teams to play in their sport and kick everybody else out.
You did say you didn't think
not
Missouri
every
or Vanderbilt were going to be in that.
Maybe Mississippi State, maybe Kentucky. You could throw a few other ones in there, but guess what? Half the ACC and half the Big Ten might be in trouble too. I'm just suggesting that's something to keep an eye on. I'm not saying that the SEC will never kick a team out of its conference. Is that fair? Can we move on now? I love Missouri. Yes. I've been talking up Missouri for 3 months now.
You really do defend Missouri most of the time.
I think they got a great defense. I think they're going to shut people down.
You've been drinking the Eli Drinkwitz Kool-Aid for a minute too.
Yeah, and not everybody gets along with Eli.
He's a lot nicer off camera.
Shocking.
Yeah, that's true. I think Missouri is going to be very good, very dangerous. I think 7 or 8 wins is absolutely possible, and I think they got LSU at home, right? I think they can beat them. They got some really tough games that I think they can actually win. So
before you totally move on from that too, I think that this says a lot about this. There's a recruiting factor to this, obviously, with what they have been able to do in securing these guys, because it's not going to just being in state is not enough. Like, you have to know that you're going to fit into a system and that the coaching staff cares and they're going to let you do what you think you're best at on the field. Otherwise, you're going to go to whatever coaching staff is saying they're going to do that, whether they're actually going to do it or not. And he did say, like, Missouri has been on me from the very beginning, and that he's going to be coming off the edge and rushing the quarterback. He's going to be actually dropping into coverage at times. Like, he's like, I see my vision for myself, and it's aligned with the coaching staff at Missouri sees for me. And so for that reason, and probably also being the hometown hero, like he equated.
Yeah, that's
not always enough. That
to me is what to Mike's point, though. It's like, if enough kids just stayed at home and wanted to be like that, and again, he's getting the bag too, so fine, but not a single one of us, not one of you in the comments and not one of the 3 of us doesn't take the bag. Everybody takes the bag. The university takes the bag. The TV people take the bag. The coaches take the bag. The players take the bag. Every human being I know takes the bag. So I don't think that's a big deal. But the fact that he gets to stay at home and sort of want to be a part of building something, if that is in fact what happens, that's how you build Missouri football. Yep. That's what's cool, and that's what's fun. And to go back to, and I'm scrolling up here and quick in the comments because Breaking Parallels said this. and this will dovetail into our conversation about coordinators. Missouri's had a good defense, but they can play winning. But can they play winning offense? Something they supposedly hired Eli to do. They did hire Eli to develop quarterbacks. That hasn't happened. So he fired himself, and he hired Kirby Moore. And we're going to get to the coordinator in just a second. But I want to comment real quickly on Vandy practice because I had a chance to go out there, and I want to see what you think about this. So I was told that Vanderbilt, and I saw a few big hits in practice when I was out there. I've been out there a couple of different times, and I was told that Vanderbilt is more physical and hits more in practice than all other teams in the SEC. Now, an anonymous coach told us that, and it's probably the highest compliment that you can pay a football team, that no matter what the score is, they can't tell what the score is by watching tape of how the defense plays. Meaning it doesn't matter if you're up by 40 or down by 40 or a tie game, their defense plays equally as hard on every snap. And I saw them hitting a lot at practice. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything for their record. Maybe it does. Maybe it means they win some of those 50-50 games. Mm-hmm. Are we taking the over 3.5? I think we all are. I just thought that was an interesting note that Vanderbilt, of all teams, they don't care about the portal and they want to hit harder than everybody else in practice. Is that the right way to do it?
I think so.
Well, look at the schedule. They're just going to beat the shit out of Hawaii and Alabama A&M. But, hey, that strategy sounds good. But what happens when you get to Kentucky, Missouri, Florida, Georgia, on and
but
on
you just, to hit the over, you just got to win one.
Oh, I got you. But, I mean, the goal at Vanderbilt, Clark Lee says it himself, is not
to hit the over.
To hit the over. The goal is to go to the postseason. So they got to win a couple SEC games. So, I mean, I do like it, but I just hope we got enough bodies because just look at the final stretch at Florida, Georgia, at Ole Miss, Auburn, South Carolina, Tennessee. I don't know how many guys they're going to have available if they're beating the shit out of them in practice.
And those games that sometimes tip one way or the other, like we always play Ole Miss close, and that one's at home. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, Ole Miss this year is on the road.
Sorry. So that's that's a teetering game for Vanderbilt. Like no matter how good Ole Miss is or how bad Vanderbilt is or vice versa, that game is always like they play to each other. The game is almost always close. Mm-hmm. And then South Carolina and Tennessee can also be like tipping games and go either direction, but they're all away. So I do think that's going to be hard.
So Jared says, wow, didn't realize, but Vandy has a very favorable schedule. I think you could argue that because Wake Forest is way down this year relative to how good Wake Forest has been. The other three games are winnable. They don't play what is probably the top three teams in the West on paper. They don't play A&M, LSU, and Bama. They miss Arkansas. Auburn could be quite good by November 4th.
Yeah, they could be.
We don't know. They also weren't expected to beat Kentucky or Florida last year, and they did. So I think I would take the over on 3.5. I don't think they're going bowling, but I do think it's interesting because I go to Titans practice all the time, and like the NFL has such strict rules on hitting that you can only hit like once a week in the NFL. The SEC's got less rules, but some rules. And if you're Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or Brian Kelly or Jimbo Fisher, like, do you want to beat your guys into like they don't? Those teams don't do that. I would argue it's because those teams are far more physical.
And one other interesting thing to note on this schedule, the final 4 games, they get 6 weeks to prepare for them because there's 2 buys thrown in at the final 6 weeks of the schedule.
Yeah, they don't play the 18th.
4 games. And credit to Clark Lee. I mean, I'm kind of joking about beating the hell out of his guys, but they always, at least the 2 years we've seen them at Vanderbilt, they're better by the end of the season than they are at the beginning. So clearly they know what they're doing.
I think they could win 5, which I would be very happy about if we are playing favorite.
I think they can. I think they can match last year. AJ Swanett looked way better in camp. I think he's going to be a nice player. And we'll get to the coordinator issue because they're only one of 2 teams in the conference that have a quarterback and a coordinator back. Alex says, I haven't seen the other 2 hosts. We are new to that SEC podcast platform, and Mike is new to our audience on the podcast, so we do appreciate the opportunity. They've kind of talked like we should know what they've said in the past. No, we don't. Can we get a plug from where they're from? Aaron.
No, we're just trying to tell you what we said in the past.
Yeah. SEC Football Live is an artist formerly known as Fringe Element. It's just SEC Football Live. It's a show that we've been doing on my network, 440 Sports, for a long time, a couple of years now. And Mike and I have sort of been following each other for a while, and we've been guests on each other's shows for a while, and we thought we wanted to go live and talk to you guys, and sure enough, you guys are blowing up the comments, and we appreciate it. So if you have any questions, Mike will just tell you exactly. He's good at putting words in my mouth. So he'll just tell you what I did or didn't say in the past. Okay, so that gets us into coordinator, quarterback, and I the one I want to start with, which is the one that I think means the least.
Okay.
And that is Tennessee. I don't think it's a brand new coordinator. Joey Halzle takes over. Alex Golesh is gone. But really, is it anything more than Josh Heupel's offense at this point?
But he's already been the QB coach, so it's one of the most seamless situations that they could be in. And I'm with you, Braden. And I'm not sure it would really matter, even if it wasn't him. But I think it will be even that much more seamless because he has the knowledge of the system, knows the passwords, all that jazz.
And I hear he's a great guy, so I'm not going to bash him like Braden. But what you see from Heupel, since he's been at Tennessee, a couple guys have moved on. Former coordinator, of course, now head coach at South Florida, the former receivers coach to the NFL. He's promoted from within at tight ends and receivers coach, and they haven't slowed down. So I know he's very protective of his scheme and not sharing too much details with other people. And that's part of the interview process, too. You kind of have to explain a lot. And I think Nick Saban's brought people in just to pick their brain and then kick their ass out the door to get intel on their scheme. And so, hey, we'll see how this plays out.
Sometimes they even know it's happening too. They're like, "Oh,
Right.
I'm just visiting, and Nick's going to get something from me, and I'm going to be here. I'm going to get something from him, and then I'll probably be sent on my way." I don't think there's a lot to talk about with that offense. I think we kind of know what it is. It's going to be very good. They're going to score 35 to 42 points almost every week. I think their championship upside hinges on Milton. That is what it is. We've talked a lot about Texas A&M as well.
Before you move on, can we? Let's address this Foster guy. Tennessee defense can't stop to park the bus. Why do people say shit like that? I mean, are they just totally ignorant to winning multiple games through the defense, or did they just watch the South Carolina game? I don't know. I mean, I've said it all off season. I probably should stop saying it, but the defense won them about 4 games last year of the 11 games they won.
I think the defense was better than people thought it was last year, but I still don't think it's elite. I still don't think it's on a top tier of defensive units, even in the SEC.
Well, I'm not saying they're elite, but by God, when you score 50 a game, you don't got to be elite.
Well, that's absolutely true. I'm looking at their conference numbers. They gave up 4.8 yards per play on defense in their 5 non-conference games.
Yeah,
they gave up a full yard per play more in SEC play, 5.7 yards per play, over 400 plus yards in those 8 conference games. So they were significantly worse in conference than against Pittsburgh, which was the best team that they played basically in the non-conference. Clemson, I guess, if that one counts.
They just destroyed that offense.
Yeah.
Kentucky, another one, LSU, another one, Pitt. I mean, these are the games defense. They wouldn't have won those games without the defense.
Well, I think to your point about LSU, I don't think they won the game because of defense. Like Hooker had a good game and they scored on some short fields and which was the special teams, right?
I think they stopped them every time on 4th down, and there was like 4 or 5 of them, and in the red zone as well.
Here's my question for both of you: Does the recruiting class show up this year? I think that's the question for me. If all those defensive linemen and front 7 guys, if they're on the roster on the 2 deep this year and they're starting and they're playing meaningful snaps, then I think you're going to start to see some major growth. But I just wonder if they're ready yet. That's all.
Well, and also something that's not been discussed with Tennessee, their linebackers have been borderline atrocious. And they had Jeremy Banks last year, who, I mean, he was, I don't want to go into it, but hey, he went on to the NFL. He's already been cut. They had another, the guy, Juwan Mitchell, I think it was his name, from Texas. He transferred. He's been cut. I mean, these were their starters. So, I mean, they were working with nothing. And they worked Aaron Beasley to Orange Bowl defensive MVP. And they've got a couple 5-star outside linebackers there now going into their 2nd year at Tennessee. I mean, they added a transfer from BYU, who's a team captain there, and he's going to be automatic starter at Tennessee this fall. I mean, I think linebacker is an area where they have upgraded significantly.
I agree. Isn't it still okay to say, like, I need to – I think there's so much I need to see it to believe it with a lot of these teams. Offense, defense, like Spencer Rattler, I need to see the consistency to believe it. Tennessee winning games with the championship caliber defense, need to see it.
I mean,
I got the same question for LSU. Like,
I know. I mean, less than we ever had with LSU, but still.
Sure, but
Tennessee has done under Heupel things more quickly than even optimistic people with the Josh Heupel hire thought they could. I mean, I am definitely one of them. Like I thought the hire was great, but I did not know he could do what he did that fast. So I do think I have the same questions, Braden. You know, have those recruits, have those younger guys, are they at a point where are they ready? And I would say I don't know, but I think it's highly more possible than it would be under a different coaching staff, because I have not seen people move with the speed that Josh Heupel has and with that program.
Well, and there's no question about that. He's vastly overachieved. I think even the most ardent and passionate Tennessee fan did not see beating Bama and almost having a Heisman Trophy quarterback, and would have made the playoff if the expansion of the playoff had happened last year with ease. Yeah. And frankly, if there would have been no divisions last year, they would have rematched with Georgia in the SEC championship game. So really, they would have been an SEC championship football team in the game, at least last year. So I think he's way overachieved and ahead of schedule.
You see, this guy says Nico $13 million. Is he worth the $13 million? That's a made up number. But
I think it's $8 million.
Well, my question to you guys is, if he exceed expectations, and let's say he wins a Heisman or Tennessee wins a national championship, what will that number balloon up to at that point? I mean, are we going 30 million, 40 million, 50 million? Hell, he's worth 100 million if they win a national championship.
Well, what did the documentary say about Manziel? His Heisman was worth $37 million in earned media for Texas A&M. Here's the other thing. People lose their minds about jerseys. Like, oh, we got robbed because so-and-so sold so many jerseys. Texas A&M made $60,000 that year selling jerseys. Like that's not where the bag is. The bag is the $40 million that Manziel didn't get because of the value of the product. Not, I missed out on a 10 or 15 or 20 grand in revenue on some jerseys that we sold. All right, quickly, the two guys, three guys, very different reasons that sort of demoted themselves, and that is Jimbo Fisher down to Bobby Petrino with Connor Wigman. I think we all agree. We talked last week that's something we're all buying into. To keep onto the Missouri theme, though, and this is the one that's most interesting because Eli Drinkowitz is under just as much pressure as Jimbo Fisher. He demotes himself and hires Kirby Moore from Fresno State to be the guy, and they don't have the star quarterback that's set up yet. We don't know if it's Brady Cook or Sam Horn. I talked to somebody today that seems to think it's almost a 50-50 split, and I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. So I think a lot of this Missouri team and their upside this year, very good on defense, really good secondary, good defensive line. I think a lot of it hinges on, is Kirby Moore the right guy? Are you guys buying Kirby Moore to fix the Missouri offense?
Well, it's got to be an upgrade over what we've seen under Old Drink, who, like someone mentioned, I mean, I thought we were bringing him in to coach quarterbacks to run this offense. The offense has been holding them back. So I think options at quarterback, you say that may not be a good thing. I get it. But I think the last 3 or 4 years, they've not had options at quarterback. And I think that's what's been holding them back. So, yeah, I'd rather have two options than none. And it came out at the end of the season that Brady Cook got hurt and he was playing through injury, and that's why he was struggling. I don't know how much I buy that, but I guess, to an extent I do. But if your guy's got a torn labrum and you're still throwing him out there, what does that tell you about what they got behind him? Yeah. Sam Horn, a year older, hopefully a year better. But, I mean, I'd rather have two options than none, which I think they had last year.
I mean, I when we were talking about before the show, we're like, are we doing hit or miss on offensive coordinators, like if we had to pick? And I said hit on this one only because, well, a couple of reasons, but not good ones. One was there's only really one way to go, which is if Missouri can be, there's a comment, hold on. If Missouri, I lost it. Missouri can be undefeated going into the LSU game in Missouri. It could be interesting for a moment.
Can they beat Kansas State?
Yep. Maybe.
They got to be Kansas State.
The only other thing I was going to say about that is that I like when I see OCs who have been quarterbacks coaches and vice versa. I think that definitely is a value add. It's kind of like any job, like you're going to be better if you've done every level before it. And I really do think that quarterbacks coaches exist well as OCs. And I know OCs exist well as quarterback coaches. Sometimes they're not always, sometimes it's circle inside of a square or vice versa. But I like when people have filled both of those roles. I think it's like really valuable.
Michael, what's the worst injury you sustained in podcast through it?
I got in a car wreck like a week ago.
That's true.
Did you really?
I thought I was going to die.
You didn't sustain any injuries though, did you?
Oh yeah. I'm still hurting.
Seriously?
I push on through it. I don't even mention it.
You're
I'm
a fucking
That's
soldier,
what you get for
dude.
living in Nashville. People in Nashville cannot drive. I will go on the record with that. It's
Yeah,
pretty bad.
the guy jumped out of his car and ran into the woods, so it's all on me too.
Seriously?
Hell yeah.
You couldn't even track him down
You
through
can't
his
identify him
registration
with
or
his
the car?
vehicle?
Stolen car.
Holy God. And I heard you told the story where he just like kept running into you, and it's like, that's insane. Anyway, don't drive through Nashville, guys. It's just
Really.
don't.
And you're not safe on foot either. I would just avoid it.
Oh, man. Yeah, I had like a slight cough one time, and I did some podcasting right through that, you know. I'm an American hero.
I podcasted through many a mental injury, but I don't know about physical.
Yes, Nash Vegas is scary to drive through. That is true. It's why we need to get the cars off the road, but that's a story for a different show. All right, how about the new coaches here quickly? Philip Montgomery, been around football for a very, very long time. Auburn had some interesting situational stuff happen this weekend. Of course, Hugh Freeze sounded like he was ready to name a starter, but Robbie Ashford, Peyton Thorne, we're not sure. Of course, Phil Montgomery's going to be there. We'll get to Mississippi State and Kevin Barbay taking over for Mike Leach, of course, in tragic fashion with a star established quarterback. So of the two new offenses, we obviously have higher expectations for the veterans coming back from Mississippi State and Will Rogers, but they are trying to change the offense to add a more diverse running attack to that game. Philip Montgomery's been around a very, very long time, but doesn't have the quarterbacks, but we do trust Hugh Freeze in a big way. So what do we make of the two new SEC West and frankly picked 6th and 7th? What do we make of the two coordinator quarterback situations at Auburn and Mississippi State respectively?
I mean, we know Kevin Barbay is like, although he is trying to like get things going on the ground more and is going to present more of like a rushing offense approach, he's very proficient in like a passing offense. So I don't think that transition is going to be so stark that it's uncomfortable for that team, but because he can still rely on what he knows about the passing game. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, I like both the hires, but the two biggest issues for me is personnel, because I don't know that Mississippi State has got the right personnel at this point in time. I mean, they literally had not had a tight end on the roster since the first year of Joe Moorhead, and that's 3 coaches ago now. So they're running a system. They want to use tight ends. They lost Dylan Johnson, running back, transfer to Washington. Marks is a really good runner, but I don't know. He's never been a guy that can carry the ball 20 times a game. They may be having to ask him to do that, and I don't know what they got behind him. So there are issues at Mississippi State, and virtually the same thing at Auburn. Montgomery, I think they could not have hired a better offensive coordinator, I don't think, to go to this Baylor-esque Art Briles system. Who he ran it with Art, but how much of that was Art? How much of that was Philip Montgomery? It's not like Tulsa lit the world on fire, but again, that's Tulsa. He's got a lot better players at Auburn, but it all hinges on a new offensive line, new receivers, new quarterback, and their star running back suspended, possibly. I mean, there's just so many moving pieces with that Auburn offense, and even Josh Heupel, who, let's not go down a Tennessee rabbit hole again, but Josh Heupel, Lane Kiffin, noted as two of the best offensive minds in the SEC. They didn't even necessarily hit the ground running year one, running a similar style. So I think the future, both those programs, Auburn and Mississippi State, very bright, but particularly Auburn, their schedule, I don't think it's fair to sit here and be like, well, it's just going to do a 180. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains.
They're going to get somebody, though. They're going to, whether that's Bama at the end of the year or somebody. It's interesting, though, you mentioned Lane and Josh, because like I want to say the difference could be Hendon Hooker and Matt Corral. Like wasn't Matt Corral there when Lane Kiffin got there his first year, I believe?
Yeah, but it was not till the second year they really took off.
Right, but again, look at how good Hendon Hooker was. Even though he didn't start that year under Josh Heupel in the first season, he won the job very quickly in week 2 against Pittsburgh, and like you could see marked improvement from the way the offense functioned. Now, the 3 of us could run a better offense than Jeremy Pruitt, but that's neither here nor there. Lane Kiffin did a great job with Matt Corral. Like you could see the makings of a good offense. It didn't translate to wins. Year 2, they got to the 10-win mark, right? Year 2 for Tennessee, they get to the 10-win mark. I don't think it translates to wins. The difference is they don't have that guy on this roster. That's my question. Is Peyton Thorne, I think he's going to take care of the football better and be a better manager of the game. But I think Robbie Ashford's skill set and speed and athleticism fits the offense that Hugh Freeze wants to run better. So the question is, which one delivers more W's and more progress in the future? And I don't honestly know. I think Will Rogers is going to be fine. I think he's a tough kid. I think there's going to be moments where we're just going to go, man, I wish he would have had like 3 years in a different system before this year. If that does that make sense?
I think it also, you got to look at LSU last year, where I guess it's fair to say Jaden Daniels was a success, but I think the main reason he started was because the offensive line was such a work in progress, and they needed someone that could run.
Yep.
What if Peyton Thorne is the better option, but the offensive line is such a work in progress? It may suit them better to start Robbie Ashford. I mean, I think that is fair to throw in there as well.
I think if you talk to Cole Kubelik, the offensive line, which again, consider the source, Cole's generally pretty honest about this stuff. He's very bullish on like the upgrade in talent, but he has no clue how quickly they're going to come together at Auburn because they brought guys from everywhere to fill in those spots. Krypton Barton, what do you think about the entire ACC joining the SEC? I don't want to think about that.
Don't want them.
I want to take like the 3 or 4 best, and that's it. We'll call it a day. I'm cool with like, give me like Louisville, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia Tech.
Not
NC
Duke
State.
and Syracuse?
No, I don't want those basketball schools. I'm good with football schools.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting. I think whichever one of those two comes together the quickest is probably going to be the one that doesn't finish in the bottom of the SEC. Probably.
Look at this. I mean, I'm not totally disagreeing with this guy. Breaking parallels. Auburn overhyped this season. Besides beating Bama in 14-15, what has he done? Well, he beat the shit out of Kirby Smart. I'll tell you that. Remember that? I mean, it was like 44-10 or something like that.
Oh, what year are you talking about?
He's
Ole Miss?
done many things.
Are you talking?
I just don't know if they're all good.
Well, so
we talked about each other.
Year 1 at Arkansas State, I think they went from like a 1 or 2 win team to like a 9 or 10 win team.
Yeah,
I think he won double-digit games at Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
I think the he beat Alabama story is valid. Also overlooks the other like 11 games of the regular season, which were good. They were good seasons. They were not elite seasons. And when you are hired with that amount of money to coach at Auburn, you are hired to win national championships. So 8-4, 9-3. You didn't have to pay the $20 million buyout. You could have just kept Gus and gone 8-4, 9-3. All right.
When he got fired,
I don't think we know that yet.
When he got fired in Oxford, who was the first guy that called him and hired him? You know?
Are you asking, or are you setting me up to tell me?
I mean, I know. I'm just curious if you.
Jimmy Sexton?
Well, no, it was Kirby Smart. They brought him in as a under the table analyst. Yeah. So, I mean, you can sit here and say, you know,
I think he's a good coach. Yeah.
But so does Kirby Smart. I mean, so I don't get Georgia fans bashing Hugh Freeze. Here's the way to define.
He coaches at Auburn now. He's not our guy. Here's
the simplest way to define a coach, in my opinion. Are you more afraid of Hugh Freeze at Auburn or Brian Harsin? Case closed. Everybody knows the answer.
Oh, I agree. I'm also more afraid for the women on campus, but that's just me.
Aren't we all?
That's a small part of the equation, but it's fine.
I don't think it is. I think that's why he's the coach down there.
Listen, I think Hugh Freeze. This is my issue with Hugh Freeze in general. It's not about all the off the field stuff. I don't really care about paying players or whatever you want to do in your personal life. Mm-hmm. I don't care. You want to pay for sex? I think it should be legal in this country. Go for it. Don't care. That's between you and your wife, not my business. What I care about is sliding up into DMs of sexual assault victims. That I care about. But on the football field, the only thing that matters is, are you good enough to win national championships? And is it worth the risk to make sure you use a flip phone, Hugh? Okay.
Josh, thank you for that.
Thanks, Josh. No, I think this is what I don't understand about the risk. I think you're completely right, Mike, that he is far better than Brian Harsin. I'm more scared of Auburn. There's no question. I don't know if he has not. This is not Urban Meyer. You hire Urban Meyer, everyone knows that he can win a national championship. Like we know that for sure he can do that. I don't think we know for sure what the ultimate upside is of Hugh Freeze. We think he's really good.
Yeah, he's like made the best of some not particularly easy situations, but we don't know if the ceiling on that is a national championship.
I like to call him Gus Malzahn with baggage. I mean, that's what he is. And they ran Gus off. They'll probably run Hugh off here in a couple years too.
I mean, if they go 9-3 a bunch, and they're pretty good, which I think they will be, they'll be pretty good under Hugh Freeze. The key is that's not what you get hired to do at Auburn. You don't get hired to be pretty good. You get hired to be elite. and to win national
Now, if he beats
championship.
Saban's ass this year, let's build him a statue. I'll change my mind.
Yeah,
Look,
that buys you like 3 to 4 years at least.
I would not be surprised at a 5-6 Auburn team beating Alabama at the end of the year. I would not be to get to bowl eligibility. I would not be surprised. Auburn is hard to beat in that place. They'll be much better at the end of the year than at the beginning. How do we know what Alabama's doing at that point? Alabama could go a million different directions.
You can never predict that game.
Speaking of, by the way, rate, review, subscribe, of course. If you're joining us for the first time, we do appreciate it every single Tuesday here on that SEC podcast and 440 Sports YouTube pages. You can catch us if you want to. If you missed the show and you want to catch the podcast, of course, please go check that out as well. SEC Football Live. Every single Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Central Standard God's Time. That brings us to Tommy Rees and Alabama. Before we get into Rees and what the offense is going to look like, I think I want to know who you think is going to be the starting quarterback week 1 and who's going to be the starting quarterback week 3. That's what I want to know.
I mean, I have no idea. So it's just a complete guess, but I would assume Jalen Milroe. And I know the popular belief is, I don't understand where this is coming from, but the popular belief is whoever they trot out week 1 is not going to be the guy. That makes no sense to me. So I'm sticking with Jalen Milroe. Unless they lose to Texas, they're not going to switch quarterbacks.
Well, but you're picking them to lose to Texas. And if all three quarterbacks are getting reps with the ones and all 3 quarterbacks are about even, Jalen Milroe's the safest and most experienced.
I think they're going to beat Texas by about 20 points.
Okay. All right. Well, that's different than the stuff you've been selling me all summer.
What do you think, Braden?
I think he's right. I think Jalen Milroe's a starter.
I do too.
I think they want to play 2017 Bama football. Tommy Rees, Notre Dame's entire ethos is like ground and pound, slow the game down. I think that they know that's what they have to do this year, and I think they could be good enough to do it. I just don't know if it's good enough to beat Texas. I know we say this all the time about Bama. They were 2 plays away from being 8-4. They were 2 plays away from being 12-0. So
I mean, Texas can't even compete in a Big 12. Why are we anticipating they'll be in the SEC? You know what I mean? So that's not the team I have circled. It's about the rest of them: A&M, Kentucky, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn. I mean, I think those are all losable games for Bama.
I think they are as well. I think they will lose to A&M. But is it because of the offense? I don't know. I think the quarterback could change in week 2. I don't think it's that crazy to say it could change in week 2. Mike, put the drugs down.
Well, why don't they just start that guy out of the opener?
Well, come on, you know how this stuff works. Like, don't you think Brock Vandergrift is going to play in the first couple of games for Georgia too, even though he might not start? Like, you play guys to get them reps and blowouts, and you just never know who. Like, I've seen this so many times at camps where a guy looks the part every snap and every practice. Team drills, red zone, 2-minute. They look the part, and then the lights come on, and their brains don't work.
I can't remember the last time that's at Alabama though. The only one I can think of was when they started Blake Barnett, and he was god-awful, and they put in this freshman, Jalen Hurts. That's the last time I can remember them switching starting quarterbacks.
Well, they switched in the national championship year.
Right,
that's why they lost. That's why they lost to Ole Miss. They went to Jacob Coker. Jake Coker won them a national championship because Saban was going back and forth with quarterbacks in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the Hurts thing,
and then Hurts
into it.
Derrick Henry.
Well, that was. I think that was that team.
Mm-hmm.
But then they went back and forth again in 2017, like you said. So that's twice in the last few years in the last 7 years that they've done it. So I just, when you have Tua and Bryce Young, you don't bench your quarterback.
They sure as hell don't got one now. You know what?
It's amazing how that works.
It is, isn't it?
Oh man. All right. Does anybody have any comments about Tom Rees? I know you're down on Bama this year, Mike.
Oh,
Aaron,
he's the worst.
He's the worst. That's high quality scientific evidence there.
I have spoken freely and openly about the rest of these hires. I don't know, which is okay. Braden and I also talk about this a lot. It's like, it's okay not to know. And everything we're doing is speculation anyway. I don't know how this Tommy Rees hire is going to be. And I'm not totally, I think Saban has a very strong hold on all parts of this team. So again, I think it's one of those, I think with Alabama, it always matters less. The coordinators always matter less than they do at other schools. I do not know how this is going to pan out.
Oh, wow. Was somebody banned
I put him in timeout. It's
that
like
what just
put someone in
happened?
timeout. Yeah.
What just happened? Why
Also,
did that
someone
happen?
said, "Where's cousin Shane?" It's me. He just looks different.
Where what did UGA boy for life say? What
Yeah, what
happened?
do you say?
I
I want to
mean,
know.
no need to give him
No
airtime.
racial epithets on the show, please. Okay.
Yeah.
None of
Let's
that.
just go with that. So
none
he's
of
in
that.
timeout. I'm
Timeout,
not banning him.
okay.
I'm not a banner. I'm a timeouter.
Time out. You're ready for parenthood. Go
Yes,
sit
you
in the
are.
corner. Go sit in the corner. All right. So I'm sure this is gonna. I've got two. So there's three guys with NFL experience that are all coming back. I agree with you, Go Hogs. People are too sensitive and get butthurt too easily. I agree with that. For those of you not watching on the YouTube channel. Okay. So three guys, NFL experience, back to college, and have fairly established quarterbacks, at least guys that have played a lot of college football. And I find these three to be possibly the most interesting in the entire conversation because it could lead to teams that are playing for 10-win seasons, or it could lead to teams that have 5-win seasons. And I think we have Vero. There we go. Get ready for the Dow Loggins show. Here we go. Because that's the one that's the one I'm the most concerned about is Dow Loggins.
Well,
so
we know you hate South Carolina. So
I
go
do.
on.
I do. I hate you. Danny Enos at Arkansas. You got Liam Cohen at Kentucky. And you got Dow Loggins at South Carolina. Now, I covered Dow Loggins when he coached for the Tennessee Titans, not considered to be one of the brightest offensive minds in the NFL. That doesn't mean it's not going to be great in South Carolina. And when you read the reports and scouting reports about Spencer Rattler, it's about simplification. And what did Marcus Satterfield, who I also don't think is all that special, who left to go to Nebraska, why did Spencer Rattler why did it click at the end of the season? They simplified. They simplified everything pre-snap. They simplified everything post-snap. And my question for Dow Loggins is, what is it going to look like? Now, we've even got a potential injury to their number one player in Juice Wells. I think they've got some really nice tight ends. Trey Knox is going to be sneaky good. But they're going to have to score a boatload of points against a lot of really, really, really good teams. Yes, Todd, Satterfield was terrible. He didn't figure it out until like week 9, and then they finally slowed the offense, simplified the offense. They got a really tough schedule, guys. So we'll start with Loggins. Are we buying Loggins as a hire? Because I am not.
Well, Braden, maybe you missed it, but 5 SEC schools interviewed him. That was one of the talking points. Of course, none of them hired him, so I don't really understand why that's like. He had great interviews, just no one hired him. But I don't know. I mean, I'm in total wait and see mode. I'm a big believer in Shane Beamer in the culture, and clearly they overachieve every year. I know it's only been 2 years, but they overachieve, and they've been overachieving with the worst offensive coordinator in the SEC. So, if he's an upgrade, they'll be even better. But I don't know. I just think they're thin in key positions on both lines of scrimmage. That's where everybody overlooks. And now that Juice is banged up, you mentioned Trey Knox. He's banged up. I don't think either of these are significant by any means, but that's not what you want to hear when you got North Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi State, and Tennessee in the first 5 weeks of the season. You need these guys. You need them at 100%. You need Spencer Rattler firing on all cylinders because, like you said, they're going to have to outscore people. And can they do that with a new system, with your left tackle out for maybe the entire year? I just don't see it. But I'll tell you what, I think South Carolina would rather me be doubting them than blowing smoke because I'm wrong so often and they overachieve. So I'm just going to keep doubting them. And, that'll be karma coming back and bite me when they're 9-3 this year.
Mike, I'm not trying to put you on the spot because there's nothing worse than someone on air trying to produce a show in real time. But do you have South Carolina's schedule?
Yeah.
It's to avert your eyes, not safe for work. This is not safe for work, guys. This is scheduled pornography. Oh, look at that. Oh, Damn. My God. Oh, my God.
That sucks so bad.
Okay, November 4th and 11th. There you go. But also Kentucky and Clemson. Oh, my God, that's brutal.
Damn.
And another thing, all the great things we can say about Beamer, they have started slow both years. So you cannot afford to do that. North Carolina and Charlotte, college game day. I mean, the hype, the anticipation. You get embarrassed on national television. This is the night game. The week 1 slate this year is kind of weak. So I'm not poking fun at South Carolina, North Carolina, but the fact that it is prime time, Saturday night, it's going to have more eyes on it than just about any conference game South Carolina's going to play this year. Furman at home, that's an easy win, but then at Georgia, Mississippi State at home, which you cannot overlook at. People are just penciling that in as an automatic
They shouldn't.
win. They should not. At Tennessee, Florida at home. Florida beat the hell out of you. You cannot. They've never beaten Missouri under Drinkwitz.
At A&M.
At A&M, they've beaten one time.
Historic rivalry. South Carolina, Texas.
I mean, this is tough.
It's really
beyond
brutal.
tough.
Yeah. By the way, quickly here, and this ties into South Carolina to some degree. Mizzou SEC says, I know this is more of a conversational show, blah, 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 but wants to know what our predicted order of finish for each division is. We're not going to go through the entire division because he says, other than Braden having Missouri 7th, I actually have.
He has Vanderbilt.
I have Vanderbilt 7th. I have Missouri at 4th. I have Missouri at 4th. I have South Carolina 5th, Florida 6th, and Vanderbilt 7th. I haven't decided yet between Tennessee and Kentucky. I probably will go Tennessee at 2 and Kentucky at 3. I think the game in Lexington decides that, and I think Georgia at 1 is the only sure thing in all of this entire conference.
So you went went Mizzou, South Carolina for the bottom part. Mizzou, South Carolina, Florida, Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vandy 7, Florida 6,
I'd
South Carolina 5, Missouri 4.
I would flip-flop Mizzou and South Carolina, but otherwise the same order in the bottom.
I think they're all 7 and 5. I don't think there's a huge difference. I think maybe 8 and 4, but they're all going to be about the same.
Man,
why are you laughing at me?
I mean, way to go out on a limb there. Everybody's the same. Got it.
I said Missouri's 4th.
I didn't. I said Missouri. I said South Carolina's 4th.
No, Braden says everybody's 75.
Oh.
Or have you? Okay, in very serious non-hot take content here, is this not one of the most balanced conferences outside of Georgia at the top? From 2 to 14, I have never seen the SEC like this. We have questions at quarterbacks. We just talked about all the coordinators. We haven't even gotten to Dan Enos yet and Liam Cohen. I've never seen a league where we're going to have 3.5 point spreads going into almost every game, every Saturday. I think it's going to be fucking great. But they are kind of similar, and I'm putting my stake in the ground. Missouri at 4. I think that's a pretty bold statement.
There used to be like in the entire SEC, like the top 2 teams, or sometimes one, no question, that right below the top tier. Then there was 4 sections in the SEC. Now there's like
1, 2, 1.5.
Yeah.
Well, but think about it. Tennessee was miserable. Now they found their guy. Kentucky's got the best football coach they've had in the history of their football program. Shane Beamer's overachieved 2 years in a row. Missouri's recruiting better than they've recruited in a long time. Lane Kiffin's the best offensive mind Ole Miss has had maybe ever, including Hugh Freeze. You just keep going down the list. Mike Leach, rest his soul, is what built Mississippi State to where they are roster wise today. They're just good. They're just good coaches and good teams. I don't.
Well, I think that's a fine talking point, but I don't think that's how it's going to be, because we sit here and study this stuff and talk about it all off season. But then once the fall comes, momentum picks up, injuries happen, so many things. But I think that's a product of the transfer portal, and specifically in the SEC. There's holes on every roster, but most of them have done such a good job. Okay, we need defensive line. Well, let's load up in the portal. We need secondary. Let's load up on the portal. So these perceived holes, they filled with bodies. We don't know if they're going to, perform well at their new schools, but we're just looking at it on paper. And I think that's a product of it. And I think that's why the SEC is so strong, because if you play in any other conference, specifically the lower G5 level or FCS, and you get that SEC offer, you're going to jump at it more times than not.
I would also argue, if you go back and look at James Franklin at Vanderbilt's 9-win season, and you look at the coaches he was coaching against, Joker Phillips, Derek Dooley, Jim McElwain, let's be very clear about the quality of coaching in this league. It is significantly improved. So I think you're right too, Michael. I think it is all the things that make SEC programs, the ones with the money and the passion, better. And by the way, every year you do hear this about Kentucky, and twice they've won 10 games.
What are we talking about? We hear this every year. And
this is the other one. This is my other favorite one. You'll appreciate this one, Michael. Every year Tennessee's picked to win the East, and then they don't do it. I'm like, they've been picked to win the East one time in 15 years.
They're not picked every year to win the East. They're just not.
One time under Butch Jones, they were picked to win the East. One time.
Yeah.
One time. Okay, Dan Enos, Liam Cohen here. We'll wrap up this conversation with KJ Jefferson, Devin Leary, lots of starts. One's at a new place. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Liam Cohen comes back in a kind of a strange he had a 1-year affair with his old flame out there in Los Angeles, comes back. And then KJ Jefferson returns and is with Dan Enos. This is two teams that I know, Aaron, you guys both love Sam Pittman. You both love KJ. Mike, I know you've been high, like all three of us have been on Kentucky. What do we make of the new offenses in Lexington and Fayetteville?
Mike, you can go ahead.
I think the one I'm more confident in is Kentucky, just because Liam Cohen was there so recently, and a lot of the guys on that roster currently were guys they recruited when he was on staff there. So they already fit his system. They've added via the transfer. Again, going back to what I just said, they had big deficiencies on the offensive line. So they added a couple transfer offensive linemen. If they don't have to be the best offensive line, but they just can't be god awful like they were. And I've said this a million times. I'll say it one last time. I think Will Levis was horribly overrated. I think they've upgraded with Devin Leary. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kentucky's all the pieces are there for another 10-win season. It would be their third 10-win season in 6 seasons. We say this every year. Well, they've done it half the damn time, so that's pretty damn good. And then Arkansas, yeah. I mean, I got nothing bad to say about Arkansas, but I think I'm a little bit more hesitant on Dan Enos. And hell, Dan Enos has done a hell of a job for Arkansas. But the thing that kind of disturbs me a little bit, I've heard Sam Pittman say, we want to do a little bit more of what we were doing at Georgia. We want to bring that to Arkansas. And that sounds great, but you don't got Georgia talent. Even though I do think you got the best quarterback and maybe the best running back, offensive line was not getting it done last year. Yeah. They've got 2 very young tackles, promising tackles, but they ain't Georgia tackles. And then
the weapons are not great.
The receivers, once again, are all essentially transfers or sophomore players. They just lost a promising sophomore to the season. So I am a little bit more cautious on Dan Enos, but again, he has done it before, so I'm not doubting him, but I just got more faith in Kentucky's offense, if that makes sense.
Well, with Enos, for me, it's like, I mean, we know he knows how to get an offense going quickly, and he has jumped around quite a bit. So there's pros and cons to that, because he's seen a lot of things, and he's this 6th job, or he's on 6 or 7.
His career journey is bizarre, and the whole Saban thing and how he left Bama also bizarre. But
he's seen a lot. But is there and Arkansas's program is very a lot of those guys are going and staying, or at least that's what Sam Pittman wants. He wants to have that familiarity and build it. I mean, he is familiar with the landscape at Arkansas, so I think that'll help. I don't really know much else to say besides that.
I think Dan Enos is good stepping in quickly if he's got a starting quarterback. Does that make sense? KJ Jefferson is an established player and is one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. I think Dan Enos will maximize that. If you ask Dan Enos to, over a 4 or 5 year period of time, truly take a young player and mold him and develop him into a star, I don't think that's what he's best at. I think this year it will work really well with KJ Jefferson. I'm concerned about the rest of the supporting cast around him. Whereas Kentucky, best receiving core they maybe have had in a long time. You got Ray Davis at tailback. I think Leary's as good. The defense, I think, is better at Kentucky. The schedule's maybe even a little bit easier at Kentucky. So I'm with you. Last week we said on the show the team we're buying to overachieve is A&M and Kentucky. Arkansas, I think you're going to see pro-style elements from KJ Jefferson this year, and it's going to work sometimes.
Yeah.
Once KJ leaves, that's what I don't know about. When he's gone next year and you're asking Enos to truly build a new offense with a new quarterback, that's my concern with him. So, and again, to your point, Michael, I think the weaponry is a bigger concern than even I thought in this preseason going into camp. I was I think they'll find some guys. They got Rocket. I think it'll be good. And I think they're going to put everything on KJ. And that's how he ends up hurt and missing games. So I don't know. I think I had Ole Miss ahead of Arkansas in my predictions. I think I had them at 5th, and I think that's where I'm sticking with it. So
you mentioned Kentucky's schedule. It's as awful as Georgia's. I don't know why no one references
1, 2,
that.
3, 4. It's pretty back heavy.
They got Bama though in crossover. Like having to play Georgia and Bama is not, in Tennessee.
This is a good example of like
Louisville's
how much
quality.
momentum can fall in your favor. Like they could easily go 5-0, and like there's something to be said. Like, yeah, Georgia going to be tough regardless, for sure, no question about it. But there's something that like momentum is like one of those X factors that, you know, you can't really say just because you win 4 games in a row, you're going to win a 5th, or 5th, you're going to win a 6th, but it definitely helps, I think.
To me, that Mississippi State game's always weird. Even I think we talked to Will Rogers about it at media days. Like he's like, yeah, I'm so glad we got them at Starkville because weird shit happens in that game. I think you're right, Aaron. If they get on a roll and things start to work, all of a sudden you beat Vanderbilt, then you get to Florida, and if you beat Florida, I think they get 3 big games at home this year. When you get Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama all at home, if you just win, if you can win 2 of those, you're probably gearing up to a 9 or 10 win season. So. We're all buying in on Kentucky. That's 2 episodes in a row. We're blowing up Kentucky. So scrimmages all across the SEC taking place. I'm not sure what any of us are learning about anything, but it's happening all across the conference. We are how many days at time of taping? How many days away are we from college football in the SEC?
18 from week 1, and then so 11 from week 0.
Are we going to the game now, Mike? I heard you discussing that you might attend a game.
I might have to be there. I might
all 19,000 seats. Good tickets still available for the Hawaii Vanderbilt game.
Brutal.
I may decide the day of and just walk right in. I would imagine be on the 50-yard line.
Would you if Aaron was throwing a tailgate party, would you show up and tailgate and drink beer and wear Vanderbilt gear?
I won't wear Vanderbilt, but I'll do the rest.
All right.
You gonna wear Hawaii stuff?
No, I don't. Believe it or not, I don't have any Hawaiian shirts. I probably should get one though.
A deep hunter green will do.
We could find some Hawaii gear for you. There's no problem there.
Just a lay.
I don't know. I don't have a problem wearing opposing teams' gear as long as I'm going to the stadium without my favorite team there. Right?
Yeah, that's
like I got no problem with that. It's okay to be an adopted child for a day. Like it's totally fine.
Also, being a Vanderbilt fan ain't hurting anybody. Let's be honest.
They need the charity, Mike.
We're like everybody's favorite game. They're like, oh, great. We're so happy to have you. We're like, we know why. Thank you.
All right. Well, we appreciate all you guys jumping into the comments. Always a pleasure hanging out with all of you. You guys are wonderful and amazing and spectacular. You're very real. And many people are talking about it. For Aaron Dugan, he is Mike Braden. Please check us out on the socials. Aaron, where can people find you?
The Aaron Dugan on Twitter, Aaron_Dugan on Instagram.
Mike, where can people find you? As if anybody needs to know, but go ahead and tell them.
Yeah, I got too many. Just
find me.
Yeah, you'll find me.
You can get to me at Braden Gall. I'm still calling it Twitter, and I'm going down with the Twitter ship. I will bathe in the sewers all football season long, so come hang out with us. No problem there as well. For Aaron and Mike, I'm Braden. Thanks for hanging out with us. Tune in next week, everybody. This has been SEC Football Live.
Later.